The knife came fast. Tenny Crown didn't have time to think. 1 second, she was crossing the plaza outside Anymore Logistics at 11:42 on a Tuesday morning, mentally calculating if she could pick up Amara early without getting written up. The next second, her body was moving, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. "Baby, you don't turn away when somebody needs you." She threw herself between the blade and Michael Anymore's spine. The impact came like lightning. White hot, deep, stealing every bit of air from her lungs. Her knees hit the concrete. Blood spread warm beneath her discount blazer. Through the haze, she saw her boss, the quiet CEO who never raised his voice, catch her with hands that moved too fast, too sure. But his eyes weren't calm anymore. They were cold, sharp, lethal. "Get the car, now." Tenny tried to speak, but liquid filled her mouth. Her last thought before darkness swallowed her: what did I just do? When Tenny opened her eyes, she knew something was very wrong. The ceiling wasn't the yellowed popcorn texture of her apartment. It was smooth white plaster with recessed lighting. Her fingers touched sheets that felt like water. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city skyline, and for one confused moment she wondered if she'd died. Then the fire in her side reminded her she was alive. "You're awake. Good. We need to talk." Tenny jerked upright as pain exploded through her torso. Michael Anymore sat beside the bed in a leather chair, perfectly still. Up close, she noticed details she'd missed before: the scar on his jawline, the calluses on his knuckles that didn't match his corporate image. "Where am I? I need to go. I have to pick up my daughter. You took a knife meant for me. My people brought you here. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3 days? Panic flooded her system. My daughter, Amara, she's 6, I have to. She stood. Her legs gave out immediately. Michael watched as she grabbed the bedpost. You're weak from blood loss and surgery. Sit down. I can't be here. I have rent due. I have daycare bills in. You have a daughter who's been asking for you. Amara, 6 years old, Little Stars Academy. You're 3 months behind on tuition. Tenny's hands tightened on the bedpost. How do you know that? Because the moment you took that blade, you became my responsibility. Your daughter is safe in the guest wing with a nanny. Your rent is paid. Daycare debt cleared. Why? Because that knife was meant to kill me, Miss Crown. The people who sent that attacker saw you throw yourself in front of it. Which means you and your daughter are now targets. The air left her lungs. But I'm nobody. I just file papers. You were nobody. That changed when your blood hit the pavement. He stood, moving to the window, the gun holster visible beneath his collar. I'm offering you a choice, though it's not much of one. Accept my protection. Move in here with your daughter. Play my fiancé for 18 months while we find the security leak. In exchange, I clear your debts and set up a $3 million trust for Amara. He paused. Or refuse. Walk out that door and hope the people who want me dead decide you're not worth silencing. Tenny stared at him. That's not a choice. No, but it's the only one I can give you. She thought of Amara's smile. The knife. The blood. Her grandmother's voice. Baby, sometimes the only way forward is through. 18 months. Then we're free. 18 months. If we both survive. He extended his hand. Tenny looked at it. The calluses, the scars, the steadiness, and placed her hand in his. The deal was made. Her old life was over. And there was no going back. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling me if you think Tenny made the right choice. Now let's see what she's getting herself into. Tenny spent the first hour after their handshake trying to process what her life had become. Michael left her alone to rest, but rest was impossible. Her mind kept circling back to one question. What kind of CEO needs a gun holster under his shirt? The answer came that evening when Michael returned with a folder thick enough to be a novel. He set it on the bed beside her and pulled the chair closer. You deserve to know exactly what you've agreed to, he said quietly. And what kind of man you're protecting. Tenny opened the folder. The first page was a corporate profile. Anymore Logistics, established 1987 by J. Sung Anymore. Legitimate shipping company with contracts across 3 continents. The second page showed the same company with different details. Shell corporations, money laundering routes, protection rackets disguised as security consulting. My father built an empire, Michael said, his voice carefully neutral. Half of it was legal. The other half. He gestured to the documents. You're looking at 30 years of organized crime dressed up in business suits. Tenny's hands trembled as she flipped through page after page. Drug routes, extortion records, payoffs to politicians and police. And you run this now? I inherited it when he died 2 years ago. But I'm not running it the same way. Michael leaned forward, his expression intense. I've spent every day since trying to go legitimate. Shutting down the criminal operations. Making peace with rival organizations. Turning dirty money clean through actual legal business. Then why did someone try to kill you in broad daylight? Because not everyone wants peace. Michael's jaw tightened. The Blood Serpent cartel sees my reforms as weakness. They've rejected every treaty I've offered. That knife was their answer to my last peace proposal. Tenny closed the folder, her stomach churning. So when you said Amara and I are targets, I meant it. The moment you stepped between me and that blade, the serpents marked you as my ally. In their eyes, you're leverage. A weakness they can exploit. His voice dropped lower. And they will exploit it unless I make it clear that touching you means war. By making me your fiancé. By making you untouchable. Michael pulled out his phone and showed her a photo. A little girl with wild curls and a gap-toothed smile, coloring at a table. Amara. She's been asking about you constantly. Wants to know when you're coming to see her new room. Tenny's heart clenched. She thinks this is normal? That we just moved into some rich guy's house? She thinks you got a new job with amazing benefits. Which isn't entirely a lie. Michael pocketed the phone. The penthouse has a full security detail. Armed guards. Surveillance on every floor. No one gets in or out without my knowledge. That's not a home. That's a prison. That's survival. Michael's eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw exhaustion there. I didn't choose this life, Miss Crown. I inherited my father's sins along with his empire. But I'm trying to build something different. Something clean. And I'm what? Your redemption story? Your proof that I'm worth protecting. That I value loyalty. That I'm strong enough to keep what's mine safe. He stood, adjusting his collar. The engagement announcement goes out tomorrow. After that, you'll need to be seen with me. Dinners, events, public displays of affection. Tenny's mouth went dry. Affection. We don't have to make it real. But we do have to make it believable. She thought of Amara coloring in her new room. Of the $3 million trust fund. Of the knife and the blood and the cold calculation in Michael's eyes when he'd caught her. What if I can't do this? What if I'm not convincing enough? Michael paused at the door and looked back at her. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. You threw yourself in front of a knife for a stranger, Miss Crown. You're stronger than you think. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. Tenny sat alone in the expensive room, surrounded by silk and security, and wondered if strength would be enough to survive what came next. Outside, somewhere in the city, the Blood Serpents were already planning their next move. And this time, they wouldn't miss. The lie tasted bitter on Tenny's tongue, but she told it anyway. Mommy got a really good job, baby. That's why we're staying here now. Amara's eyes went wide as she explored the penthouse guest wing, her small hands touching everything like she couldn't believe it was real. The bed was bigger than their entire old bedroom. The closet had actual lights inside it. The bathroom had a tub with jets and towels so fluffy Amara buried her face in them and giggled. Is this forever? Amara asked, clutching a stuffed elephant that had mysteriously appeared on her bed. For a while, Tenny said, smoothing her daughter's curls. We'll see. But watching Amara's face light up as she discovered the playroom down the hall, complete with books and toys and art supplies that must have cost thousands, Tenny felt something crack inside her chest. Her daughter had never had new toys. Never had her own space. Never had anything that wasn't secondhand or borrowed or bought on clearance. And now she had all of it because Tenny had signed a deal with a man whose father's empire was built on blood. Miss Crown? A voice spoke from the doorway. Tenny turned to find a woman in her 30s, Korean, with a no-nonsense expression and a gun visible at her hip. I'm Jin Park. Mr. Anymore assigned me as your security detail. Tenny instinctively stepped between Jin and Amara. Security detail means bodyguard, right? You're here to watch us. I'm here to keep you alive. Jin's expression didn't change. There's a difference. Over the next 3 days, Tenny learned that difference intimately. Jin was everywhere. A shadow in the hallway when Tenny took Amara to the playroom. A silent presence in the corner when they ate breakfast. A barrier between them and the outside world that Tenny hadn't realized she needed until a delivery driver tried to get off the elevator on their floor and Jin had him removed in under 10 seconds. That was the third one this week, Jin said calmly as the elevator doors closed. Reporters trying to get photos. The engagement announcement made you very interesting. Tenny's hands shook. Reporters or assassins? Both, probably. That's why I'm here. But Jin wasn't just a bodyguard. She was the one who showed Tenny which hallways had blind spots in the security cameras. Who explained that the penthouse had 3 separate panic rooms and 2 escape routes. Who taught Amara to never open the door for anyone, not even if they said they were friends with mommy. And it was Jin who noticed when Tenny couldn't sleep, when the nightmares of the knife made her pace the floor at 3 a.m. Mr. Anymore doesn't sleep much either, Jin said one night, finding Tenny in the kitchen. He's in his office most nights. Reviewing contracts, closing operations, trying to make his father's empire into something that won't destroy him. You believe that? That he actually wants to go legitimate? Jin poured herself coffee. I've worked for the Anymore family for 8 years. I watched his father rule through fear and violence. I've watched Michael spend 2 years systematically dismantling that legacy, even when his own people told him he was weak for it. She met Tenny's eyes. He's not his father, but the world keeps treating him like he is. The next morning, Michael knocked on the guest wing door. Amara answered it, still in her pajamas. Mr. Michael. She'd already decided on a name for him. Do you want to see my drawings? Tenny watched from the doorway as Michael, this man with a gun under his jacket and a criminal empire on his shoulders, knelt down to Amara's level and studied her crayon artwork with genuine attention. This one's really good. Is that a dragon? It's a dinosaur, Amara said seriously. They're different. You're absolutely right. I apologize. Something in Tenny's chest loosened. This wasn't a performance. Michael wasn't pretending for her benefit. He was just kind to her daughter. When Amara ran off to get more drawings, Michael stood and met Tenny's eyes. The formal dinner is tomorrow night. You'll meet the organization's leadership. Some of them won't be happy about you. Because I'm black? Because you're an outsider who saw me vulnerable. His jaw tightened. But you'll be fine. Jin will be with you. And so will I. After he left, Tenny found Jin watching her with an unreadable expression. What? Tenny asked. You're starting to see it, Jin said quietly. That he's not the monster you expected. Tenny didn't answer. But that night, she didn't have nightmares about the knife. She had nightmares about what would happen if she started trusting the man who'd bought her loyalty with silk sheets and safety. Tomorrow night, she'd meet the people who wanted her gone. And some of them would be sitting at Michael's own table. The warning Jin gave her that morning should have prepared her. It didn't. They're going to test you, Jin had said, adjusting Tenny's dress. Don't react. Don't defend yourself. Just exist. That's the worst thing you can do to people who want you to disappear. The private dining room was all dark wood and crystal chandeliers. 15 people sat around a table that could have seated 30. Every single one of them looked at Tenny like she was something stuck to their shoe. Michael's hand rested at the small of her back as he guided her to her seat. Gentlemen, ladies, this is Tenny Crown, my fiancé. The silence was deafening. Then a man at the far end of the table laughed. He was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and a suit that screamed old money. Your fiancé? Michael, if you needed companionship, there are more appropriate options. Appropriate. Michael's voice went cold. Explain that word to me, Uncle Sung Minimum. Sung Min's smile didn't reach his eyes. I mean someone from a family we know. Someone with connections that benefit the organization. Not some. He waved his hand dismissively at Tenny. Charity case you picked up off the street. Tenny's nails dug into her palms under the table. Michael's hand tightened slightly on her back. Tenny took a knife meant for me, Michael said quietly. While the rest of you were safely behind desks and security details, she put herself between me and death without hesitation. So unless you'd like to volunteer to take the next blade, Uncle, I suggest you show respect. A woman across the table leaned forward. She was younger, sharper, with an edge that reminded Tenny of Jin. The question isn't her bravery. It's her motivations. Her eyes locked on Tenny. 87,000 in medical debt. 3 months behind on daycare. Eviction notice pending. Then suddenly she's wearing designer clothes and living in a penthouse. Interesting timing. You investigated me? Tenny's voice came out steadier than she felt. I investigate everyone who gets close to Michael. The woman smiled without warmth. I'm Adana Okafor, head of security. It's my job to identify threats. And am I a threat? That depends. Adana tilted her head. Are you here because you love him? Or because you love what he can give you? The table went silent. Everyone watched Tenny like she was a specimen under glass. Tenny met Adana's eyes. I'm here because the people who want him dead decided I was worth killing the moment I saved his life. I'm here because I have a 6-year-old daughter who deserves better than being collateral damage in someone else's war. And I'm here because Mr. Anymore offered me a choice between protection and a funeral. She paused. So no, I don't love him. But I respect him, which is more than I can say for people who sit safely behind walls and question other people's courage. Sung Min's face went red. How dare you? She's right. Adana's voice cut through the rising tension. She looked at Tenny with something new in her eyes. Assessment. Maybe even approval. Most people in this room have never put themselves at risk for Michael. They take his protection and his money and criticize his choices. She turned to Sung Min. At least she bled for him. What have you sacrificed lately? The rest of the dinner was tense but quieter. People whispered to each other but stopped addressing Tenny directly. Michael's hand never left her back. When it was finally over, Adana approached her in the hallway. You held your ground. That's rare. She handed Tenny a business card. If you survive the next few weeks, we should talk. I could use someone who sees things clearly. Sees what clearly? Who's loyal to Michael? And who's just using him? Adana's eyes flicked to the dining room. Because someone in there is feeding information to the blood serpents. And they're going to make another move soon. Tenny's blood went cold. How do you know? Because they always do. Adana walked away, leaving Tenny alone in the hallway. Michael appeared beside her. You did well. Your cousin hates me. My cousin hates change. Don't take it personally. He paused. Adana doesn't trust easily. If she gave you her card, it means something. It means she thinks there's a traitor in your organization. I know there is. Michael's expression went dark. I just don't know who yet. And whoever it was had been sitting at that table, watching Tenny, calculating her worth as a target. The next attack was coming. The only question was when. The traitor was still out there. And Michael had decided Tenny needed to help find them. You're going to learn to see what I see, Michael said the next morning, leading her into a room she hadn't noticed before. It was stark, clinical, with monitors covering one wall and a table in the center. Not just what people say. What they don't say. Tenny crossed her arms. I'm not a detective. I filed papers for a living. No. You survived dangerous neighborhoods as a single mother for 6 years. Michael pulled up a chair. You learned to read a room the moment you walked into it. To spot which strangers were safe and which ones weren't. To know when someone was lying before they opened their mouth. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. That's not luck. That's a skill. I'm just going to refine it. The first lesson was about eyes. Michael pulled up security footage from the dinner. Watch Sung Min when I mention the peace treaties. He played the clip. Tenny watched Michael's cousin smile and nod, but his eyes flickered to the left for just a fraction of a second. See that? That's accessing memory. He's remembering something specific. Something he doesn't want to share. Or he's just thinking. Watch it again. See how his pupils constrict slightly. That's stress. Whatever he's remembering makes him uncomfortable. They spent hours reviewing footage. Michael taught her to spot the micro-expressions that flashed across faces in milliseconds. Fear, contempt, disgust. The tiny tells that people couldn't control no matter how good their poker face was. Now watch this. Michael showed her footage of a business meeting. Tell me who's lying. Tenny studied the screen. 3 men discussing a shipping contract. One of them kept touching his collar. Another's breathing was slightly elevated. But the third man sat perfectly still, his face neutral, his hands relaxed. Him. Tenny pointed to the still one. The one who looks too calm. Michael smiled. Actually smiled. Why? Because the other 2 are nervous about normal things. Making a good impression. Getting the contract. But him? She leaned closer to the screen. He's not nervous at all. Like he already knows how this ends. He did. He was working for our competitor. Feeding them our bid numbers. Michael paused the footage. You just identified a pattern my own security team missed for 3 months. Something warm bloomed in Tenny's chest. Pride, maybe. Or vindication. The sessions became routine. Every morning, Michael would test her. Show her footage. Ask her questions. And every morning, Tenny got better at seeing the invisible patterns. But it wasn't just professional. Michael started sharing things he didn't have to. How his father used to test him the same way. How he'd learned to hide his own tells so well that even people close to him couldn't read him. Can you read me? Tenny asked one afternoon, the question slipping out before she could stop it. Michael studied her for a long moment. Yes. And? You're scared. Not of me. Of what staying here means. Of what it's doing to your daughter. Of what happens when the 18 months are up. His eyes never left hers. But you're also starting to see that this life has advantages. Safety, security, purpose. And that terrifies you more than the danger does. Tenny's throat went tight. You don't know me. I'm learning. He stood, gathering the files. Just like you're learning me. That night, Jin found Tenny staring out the window. He's getting to you, Jin said quietly. He's teaching me to survive. Is that all? Jin's expression was knowing. Because the way you two look at each other during those sessions? That's not just teacher and student. Tenny didn't answer. Because Jin was right. And that was the most dangerous pattern of all. Tomorrow, Tenny would put her new skills to the test. And discover that the threat to Amara was closer than anyone realized. The threat wasn't coming from outside. It was already inside, smiling at her daughter. This story is getting intense. If you want to see how Tenny protects Amara and uncovers the conspiracy, smash that like button and subscribe. Comment below if you caught the clue about who the traitor might be. Let's get into it. Tenny noticed it on the 3rd day of Amara's new private academy. The substitute teacher, Ms. Rachel, she'd introduced herself, was too interested in the wrong things. So Amara mentioned you're staying with Mr. Anymore now? Ms. Rachel said during pickup, her smile bright and professional. That must be quite an adjustment. Does he have a lot of security at the residence? Every instinct Tenny had developed over 6 years of single motherhood started screaming. Normal teachers asked about allergies and behavioral issues. They didn't ask about home security. We're fine, thank you. Tenny kept her voice neutral, but her hand tightened on Amara's shoulder. Of course. I just meant with all the media attention about the engagement, it must be overwhelming. Do you have a lot of staff? Bodyguards? There. The micro-expression Michael had taught her to spot. Ms. Rachel's pupils dilated slightly when she said, bodyguards. Not nervousness. Interest. Hunger. Tenny smiled blandly. I really need to get Amara home. Come on, baby. The moment they were in the car with Jin, Tenny pulled out her phone. That substitute teacher. Something's wrong. Jin's expression sharpened. Wrong how? She was asking about security. About the penthouse. About Michael. Tenny's hands trembled as she texted Michael. And when I watched her, she had the same tells as that man in the footage. The one who was working for the competitor. Too calm. Too controlled. Like she already knew what she wanted to hear. Jin immediately made a call. We need background on a teacher. Now. Within an hour, Adana was in Michael's office with Tenny, pulling up files on screens. Rachel Morrison, hired 2 weeks ago as a substitute through an agency. Adana's fingers flew across the keyboard. Credentials check out. Teaching license valid. References solid. Too solid, Tenny said, leaning forward. She'd been studying the patterns Michael taught her. Look at the dates. She got her teaching license, worked at 3 different schools, got glowing reviews, all in the span of 18 months. No gaps. No sick days. No complaints. People have good years, Adana said, but her tone was skeptical. Not in teaching. My mom was a teacher. There's always something. A difficult parent. A budget cut. A policy disagreement. Tenny pointed to the screen. This is a resume built to look perfect. Not a real career. Michael entered the office, his expression dark. Jin just confirmed. The agency that placed her? It's a shell company. Created 3 months ago. The room went cold. She's blood serpent, Adana said flatly. She's been alone with my daughter. Tenny's voice cracked. For 3 days. Asking her questions. Learning our routine. Michael's hand landed on her shoulder. Jin pulled Amara from the academy an hour ago. She's in the penthouse with 2 armed guards. She's safe. For now. Tenny turned to face him. But they got someone inside. Someone close enough to touch her. What's next? Adana pulled up traffic camera footage. I'm tracking Rachel Morrison's movements after she left the academy. She paused, her expression grim. She went straight to a warehouse in Chinatown. Known blood serpent territory. Michael's jaw tightened. We need to send a message. One they can't misunderstand. What kind of message? Tenny asked. The kind that makes them realize you're not a target. You're a weapon. He looked at Adana. Bring her in. Quietly. No police. No witnesses. Tenny watched as Michael's organization moved with terrifying efficiency. Within hours, Rachel Morrison was in a secure location, and Tenny's instincts had been proven right. That night, Adana found Tenny in the security office. You identified a trained operative using observation skills you learned in 2 weeks. Most of my team didn't catch her. She paused. Michael was right about you. You see things we miss. I just pay attention. No. You understand people. That's rare. Adana's eyes held respect. I'm adding you to the security briefings. We need your eyes on something else. What? The mole. The one feeding information from inside. Adana pulled up organizational charts. Because whoever sent Rachel Morrison knew exactly which academy Amara attended. And only 5 people had that information. Tenny's blood ran cold. You think it's someone at that dinner? I know it is. Adana's expression was steel. And you're going to help me prove it. The enemy wasn't just outside the walls anymore. They were sitting at Michael's table, smiling to his face, and planning their next move. And Tenny was about to walk straight into their crosshairs. The footage of the attack had been reviewed dozens of times. But no one had asked the right question until Tenny did. Why that exit? She froze the frame showing the moment before the knife. Michael's building has 4 exits. Why was the attacker waiting at the east entrance specifically? Adana leaned closer to the screen. Random chance? At 11:42 a.m. on a Tuesday? Tenny scrolled back through the timeline. Look, Michael left a board meeting at 11:35. He had 7 minutes to choose an exit. The main lobby would have been faster. The parking garage more direct. But he went east. He always uses the east exit on Tuesdays, Adana said slowly. It's quieter. Less foot traffic for security to monitor. Exactly. Tenny pulled up Michael's schedule. It's a pattern. One someone close to him would know. The realization hit Adana like a physical blow. The attacker was waiting, not hunting. Waiting at the exact exit Michael would use at the exact time he'd use it. Which means someone told them. Tenny met Adana's eyes. Someone who knows his schedule intimately. They brought Michael into the security office. He watched the footage in silence, his expression growing colder with each replay. Only 5 people have access to my daily schedule, he said finally. Adana, my assistant David, my cousin Sung Min, my logistics head Marcus, and my financial controller. We've vetted everyone, Adana insisted. Background checks, loyalty tests, surveillance, but you're all inside the organization. Tenny stood. You know what to look for in each other. You know how to hide from your own security protocols. She paused. I don't. I'm an outsider. I see different patterns. Michael's eyes locked on hers. You want to investigate my inner circle. I want to observe them. Watch how they interact with you. With each other. With information. Tenny's voice was steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. I've spent 6 years learning to spot danger. Let me use it. Adana shook her head. If the mole realizes you're watching. They already see me as Michael's charity case. The gold digger fiancé who doesn't belong. Tenny smiled without humor. Let them underestimate me. People reveal more when they think you're not paying attention. Michael was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. You'll attend all my meetings. Dinners. Strategy sessions. As far as anyone knows, you're there because I want you close. Learning the business. And really? Really, you're hunting. His expression was grim. But Tenny, if you identify the mole, you don't confront them. You don't hint. You tell me or Adana immediately. These people are dangerous. I know. One of them already tried to have you killed. Over the next week, Tenny became a fixture at Michael's side. She sat quietly in meetings, pretending to be bored while cataloging every interaction. She attended dinners where executives pitched proposals, watching who made eye contact and who avoided it. She noticed things Michael's team had normalized. David Wong, the director of operations, took 3 personal calls during every strategy meeting. Always stepped out. Always came back slightly tense. Marcus Chen, head of logistics, asked questions about security protocols that seemed reasonable but were oddly specific. Which guards worked which shifts? Which cameras had blind spots? Song Min checked his phone compulsively, typing messages with his screen angled away from everyone else. But it was something smaller that caught Tenny's attention. Something she'd learned as a single mother navigating dangerous neighborhoods. David's tells weren't about stress. They were about timing. Every time Michael mentioned the blood serpents in meetings, David's breathing changed. Not fear. Anticipation. Like he was waiting for specific information. I need to get closer to him, Tenny told Michael one night. David, I need to observe him outside of meetings. That's dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. Tenny met his eyes. But if he's the leak, we need proof. And I'm the only one who can get it without raising suspicion. Michael's jaw tightened, but he nodded. The next day, Tenny would begin the most dangerous game of her life. Getting close to a man who might be selling Michael's secrets to killers. And if she was wrong, she'd destroy an innocent man's life. But if she was right, she'd save Michael's. The question was whether she'd survive long enough to know the difference. Getting close to potential traitors required becoming someone they'd talk to. Someone harmless. Someone beneath their notice. Tenny played the role perfectly. I'm sorry, I know this is probably boring for you, she said to David Wong during a coffee break between meetings, adding just the right amount of self-deprecation to her voice. All this business talk goes over my head. David smiled, the condescending expression she'd seen a dozen times from men who thought single mothers couldn't possibly understand complex things. It's a lot to take in. Michael should probably ease you into this world more slowly. He's just trying to include me. Make me feel like I belong. Tenny stirred her coffee, watching David's reflection in the window. It's sweet, really, even if I don't understand half of what you all discuss. Over the next 2 weeks, Tenny made herself a fixture in the background of the organization's daily operations. She brought coffee to meetings, asked simple questions that made her seem curious but clueless, laughed at jokes she didn't find funny, and watched. Always watched. Marcus Chen was territorial and suspicious, but his patterns were clean. He went home to his wife every night. Took his kids to soccer practice. His phone records showed calls to logistics companies, shipping contractors, normal business contacts. Song Min was bitter and resentful, but his hatred was open. He made no secret of his disdain for Tenny or Michael's reforms. Everything about him was loud, obvious. Not the profile of someone running a covert operation. But David. David was different. Tenny noticed it first during a strategy meeting about expanding legitimate shipping routes. Michael mentioned that they'd be cutting ties with a distributor suspected of blood serpent connections. David nodded, said all the right things about supporting the decision. But his left hand, hidden under the table where most people wouldn't see it, clenched so tightly his knuckles went white. The personal calls increased. 3 times during that meeting alone, David's phone buzzed. He silenced it each time, but Tenny saw the micro-expression flash across his face when he glanced at the screen. Not annoyance. Fear. She started tracking the timing. David took calls every day at 2:15 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Like clockwork. He always stepped into the same conference room. Always locked the door. Always came back looking slightly more tense than when he'd left. His daughter is having trouble at college, Jin told Tenny when she asked. Apparently he's been helping her with essays and applications. Very involved father. But something about that didn't sit right. Tenny had helped plenty of kids with college applications when she'd worked at the community center. Parents stressed about deadlines and recommendation letters didn't look like David looked. They looked harried, frustrated. David looked scared. I need to hear one of those calls, Tenny told Adana. We can't tap his phone without evidence. It's illegal and it'll tip him off. Then I need to be in the room when he makes one. Adana's expression was skeptical. And how exactly do you plan to do that? The opportunity came 3 days later. David was scheduled for his 2:15 call. Tenny, accidentally, left her phone in the conference room he always used, then knocked on the door 5 minutes into his conversation. I'm so sorry, I think I left my... She stopped, her eyes widening at the sight of David's expression. Pure panic. Oh God, I'm interrupting. I'm sorry, I'll just... Wait. David's voice was sharp. He ended his call abruptly and stood. What did you hear? Nothing. I just walked in. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were on a call. Tenny backed toward the door, but she'd heard enough. Just 3 words before David had noticed her. Need more time. Spoken in a tone that wasn't parental concern. It was desperation. David's eyes searched her face, and Tenny knew he was looking for signs that she'd understood. She kept her expression confused, apologetic, slightly embarrassed. My daughter, David said finally, his voice too controlled. College applications. It's stressful. Oh, I totally understand. I worry about Amara's future all the time. Tenny grabbed her phone from the table. Sorry again for interrupting. She left before he could ask more questions. But her hands were shaking. That night, she told Michael and Adana what she'd heard. 3 words isn't evidence, Adana said. No. But the way he looked when I walked in? Tenny shook her head. That wasn't a father worried about college essays. That was someone caught. We need proof, Michael said quietly. Concrete evidence. Because if we're wrong, we're not wrong. Tenny pulled up her notes. Every time you mention the blood serpents in meetings, David's stress responses spike. Every time you discuss cutting ties with their suspected associates, he makes a call within the hour. It's not random. It's a pattern. Michael's expression went dark. Then we give him something too valuable not to report. And we watch where the information goes. A trap, Adana said. A test. Michael looked at Tenny. And if you're right, it proves David is the leak. But if you're wrong, we've just destroyed a loyal man's career and maybe his life. Tenny thought about the knife. The blood. Amara's face. The way David's hand had clenched when Michael mentioned cutting blood serpent ties. I'm not wrong. Tomorrow, they'd set the trap. Feed David information about a secret peace negotiation. And see if the blood serpents showed up to the meeting no one was supposed to know about. But traps worked both ways. And if David suspected anything, Tenny might be walking into an ambush. The trap was set. David Wong would either prove his innocence or condemn himself with his own words. Michael scheduled the peace summit with Dragon Gate for neutral territory, a private restaurant that had hosted underworld negotiations for 3 decades. David, as director of operations, would naturally attend. So would Sung Min, Marcus, and Adana. But only 3 people knew the real tactical detail: the location of Michael's backup security team stationed in the building across the street. Michael, Adana, and Tenny had discussed it in Michael's office with the door locked and all devices powered off. If David mentioned that detail, he was the leak. The negotiation started smoothly. Dragon Gate's representative, an older Chinese man named Wei, outlined terms for a neutral corridor between territories. Michael countered with shipping route access. Standard business. Then David spoke up. Before we agree to anything, we need assurances about security. Michael's backup team in the building across the street is a good start, but Dragon Gate should have equivalent protection. The room went silent. Tenny's heart stopped. She caught Michael's eye and touched her left earring, the signal they'd agreed on. Michael's expression didn't change, but his voice went cold. David, could you clarify something for me? How did you know about the backup team's location? David froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. I assumed. Standard protocol. We never discussed their location in any meeting you attended. Michael stood slowly. So how did you know? David's hand moved toward his jacket. Adana was faster. Her gun was out before David's fingers touched metal. Don't, she said quietly. David's face transformed. The fear was gone, replaced by cold calculation. You don't understand what you've done. The blood serpents will burn everything you're trying to build. Your father's empire, your pathetic peace treaties, all of it. Why? Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. Because they promised my daughter's safety. Real safety. Not your reformed fantasy world where criminals play at being legitimate. David's laugh was bitter. You think going clean protects anyone? It just makes you weak. He lunged. Not for his gun. For Tenny. Michael moved like lightning, slamming David against the wall before his hands reached her. The sound of bone hitting concrete echoed through the room. You sold me out to protect your daughter? Michael's voice was lethal. By making someone else's daughter a target? Security flooded in. David was dragged away, still screaming about protection and pragmatism in survival. Wei watched it all with ancient eyes. Your house is compromised, Mr. Anymore. Perhaps more than you know. Those words would haunt Tenny for the rest of the night. Because David had been caught. But his last words before security took him suggested something worse: he wasn't working alone. And whoever else was feeding information to the blood serpents was still out there, watching, waiting for their moment to strike. David's interrogation revealed 3 more leaks. Michael's organization bled traitors for 72 hours straight. We're at the final chapter. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me what you want to see next. Should Tenny and Michael get a sequel? Let me know. Now let's see how this ends. By the time the purge was over, Michael had lost a third of his leadership. The ones who remained looked at Tenny differently now. Not as the charity case. As the woman who'd saved their organization from collapsing. The 18 months are almost up, Michael said one night, finding Tenny on the penthouse balcony. You fulfilled your part of the agreement. More than fulfilled it. Tenny watched the city lights. And I'm offering you a choice. Real choice this time. He handed her an envelope. Witness protection. New identities for you and Amara. 3 million in untraceable accounts. You disappear. Live the quiet life you wanted. Tenny opened the envelope. Saw the documents. The new names. The future she'd dreamed of 6 months ago. Or, she asked quietly. Or you stay. Not as my fake fiancé. As my partner. Help me finish what we started. Michael's voice was raw with something she'd never heard before. Vulnerability. The blood serpents won't stop. The war is coming whether we want it or not. And he stopped. Started again. I trust you. More than anyone in my organization. More than anyone in my life. Tenny turned to face him. Really looked at him. The man who'd caught her when she was bleeding. Who'd protected her daughter like she was his own. Who'd taught her to see patterns and trust her instincts. Who carried his father's sins like weights and tried every day to be better than the empire he'd inherited. I was invisible before you, she said. A single mother working 3 jobs just to survive. Disposable. Forgettable. You were never. Let me finish. She stepped closer. You made me dangerous instead of disposable. You gave me purpose. You saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Her voice dropped. And somewhere along the way, this stopped being fake. Michael's eyes searched hers. Tenny, I'm staying. Not because I'm trapped. Not because I'm scared. Because I choose this. I choose you. She touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. We build something better. Together. He kissed her then. Not for show. Not for cameras or witnesses. Just for them. When they pulled apart, Michael's expression was different. Lighter. Like he'd been holding his breath for months and could finally exhale. The blood serpents will come hard, he warned. Let them. I'm not the same woman who threw herself in front of a knife anymore. No. You're the woman who exposed 4 traitors and saved my organization. He smiled. You're terrifying. Good. Tenny looked out at the city. Their city. Because the war's just beginning. And I intend to win. Somewhere across town, the blood serpents were planning. Somewhere in the organization, there might be more leaks to find. Somewhere in the future, harder choices waited. But tonight, Tenny Crown stood on a penthouse balcony with the man she loved, her daughter safe inside, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Power, purpose, partnership. She'd taken a stab meant for a mafia boss. And in return, she'd found herself. The greatest price she'd paid wasn't the blood on the pavement that day. It was everything she'd been willing to settle for before. The invisibility, the survival, the small, scared life. Now she was dangerous. And she'd never go back. Michael and Tenny's war with the blood serpents has only just begun. Their love was forged in violence and deception, but can it survive what comes next? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment what other stories you want to see. Until next time.